I've always really enjoyed the Omen as a franchise. Even as a kid, I found something about the original trilogy centering around Damien Thorn especially gripping. However, I never had much use for the cheap TV movie sequel, Omen IV: The Awakening, which I'm just gonna pretend never existed, or that terrible scene-for-scene remake, which, despite a pretty game cast, didn't come close to recapturing the grisly spirit of Richard Donner's original. As such, I figured that the first Omen would be just another would-be franchise starter, but I gotta give 20th Century Studios and Disney credit. They made one hell of a cool horror flick. Pun intended. In some ways, the first Omen is a bit like Wonka. Now, bear with me here in my comparison, in that they're both prequels that manage to do their own thing without shitting all over the original, with the Donner film and the original movies that followed it all existing in the same universe as this does. Director Akasha Stevenson of Sci-Fi's Channel Zero is likely gonna come off this as one of the fastest rising new names in horror. She really has made an Omen film that's distinctly not at all what fans feared it might be, namely watered down and overly safe, or dare I even say the dreaded woke word.
My opinion, because I'm not a member of the damn patriarchy.
It's actually quite provocative in its own way, with several images including a gruesome birthing scene pushing the limits of the R rating in a way I didn't expect from a movie bankrolled by Disney. Without giving too much away, the first Omen basically sets up the events that eventually lead to the birth of Damien Thorn. They do so by telling the story of a young would-be nun, played by Nell Taggart-Free, who travels to Rome to work with a seemingly kind priest, played by Bill Nighy, who helped raise her. Once then, people begin dying in grisly Omen-like fashion, with Ralph Ineson's Father Brennan warning her that a child she's helping to care for, Carlita, played by Nicole Saras, is at the center of a vast conspiracy. Now, if you remember your Omen films, you know that Damien always had many devout followers and people that helped him out, and this film does a good job laying the groundwork for a new series of Omen flicks that could theoretically exist alongside the original films. It's helped by the surprisingly gruesome and grim tone that feels right in league with the original trilogy. Nell Taggart-Free makes for a terrific lead, with her having had years of work on Apple TV Plus's Servant to help prep her horror bona fides. Her sister Margaret is a believable lead in the same way that Gregory Peck was in the original, in that both are victims of a vast conspiracy that they have no idea how to fight, with the movie having a very cool moment towards the end that mirrors a particular scene with Peck in the original that I won't share. Notably, Margaret isn't an action hero. She's believably conflicted and vulnerable throughout, and she's well supported by Ralph Ineson, who fills a similar role to what Leo McKern did in the original, with his unhinged stories of a conspiracy in the church being one that Margaret doesn't want to believe, but eventually must. Sonia Braga, who I'll always remember for her villainous henchwoman role in Clint Eastwood's The Rookie, which is a wild, wild movie if you haven't seen it, also has quite a nifty role as one of the nuns in Nighy's church who, wouldn't you know it, just might be up to no good. The film is set in early 1970s Rome, and Stevenson takes a different approach than the people in the similarly themed Immaculate did, in that she doesn't do the predictable thing and ape Dario Argento style, which is a temptation many horror directors can't seem to resist. Although, like Immaculate, she does have kind of a shout out to Zulawski's Possession, which is kind of nifty because I wouldn't have thought that two movies coming out within a month of each other would both nod towards that same deliciously eccentric but kind of obscure film. Instead, she makes the movie in the same vein as Richard Donner's work on the original, meaning that it's much more reality based because that was something that Donner always was committed to, verisimilitude. And she does the same thing here. In fact, it's quite evocative of its era that it's set in. I especially enjoyed one impressive sequence that's set in an Italian discotheque. Stevenson did a better job making this in the spirit of the original than David Gordon Green did recently when he tried to riff on William Friedkin's style for his really terrible Exorcist sequel. The score, also by Mark Coven of The Lighthouse, is quite good, with it initially seeming a little too subtle until the horror really starts to ramp up and it starts playing with those classic Jerry Goldsmith themes. Once they kick in, oh yeah, it's on. All in all, I was really shocked by how much fun I had with the first Omen. My only complaint is that despite a couple of shocking bits, too much of the gore had that CGI look that's all too common nowadays and is a trend I really wish horror movies would get away from. Even still, that's a pretty minor complaint, and I have to say that I'm actually interested in seeing where this new Omen franchise might go. It's a worthy follow-up to the original trilogy, and hey, I'm surprised to say that, but glad. I give this a shocking 8 out of 10. I gotta say, between this and Late Night with the Devil, Antichrist movies are kinda hot right now.